Hello and welcome to another video. I've had a nightmare with the weather today, absolute nightmare. I've been chasing different shots all over North Yorkshire all day long and it just has not been happening. I'm currently racing to a spot that I know quite well to try and capture what I think could be an amazing sunset, but I'm against the clock. It's probably about 20 minutes to sunset. I need to be there a few minutes before. It's about a 15-minute walk, so it's going to be tight, but I would love it if you were to come with me. Let's go.
Also, today's episode is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a website, a domain name, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace.
Right, so I've made it, I'm in position, and I've even made it in enough time to get a time lapse, which is what I'm doing here. It's a very popular spot, this. There's other photographers around, and the reason being, I think at the moment it could be something quite stunning. Every time I come here to the North Yorkshire moors, there's generally mist or cloud on the horizon, and today it's kind of the other way around. The sky is full of cloud, but right on the horizon there is that thin band of clear sky. When that sun drops below that cloud line, I'm hoping something pretty special is going to happen. These clouds will hopefully catch with some nice yellows and oranges and warmth, and hopefully we'll get a bit of sun on Roseberry Topping there behind me, which will make this a really interesting picture. I still need to find a composition. I got here late, so I don't have the best position. I want to get some of the heather in the foreground. It's not very colourful this year. I was here about this time last year and it was a beautiful purpley pink, but it's kind of a bit more dull this year maybe because of that really hot weather we had earlier in the season. I'm also getting eaten by flies, but I'm just going to let this time lapse run, calm down a little bit because it's been a busy day so far, and then try and get a decent composition to get an image. It's all going to be about the sky though today, so I'm not that bothered particularly about what's in the foreground, so we'll see how we go. Right, so I think what I've done is gone ahead and jinxed it, because I thought we were going to get a massive amount of colour on Roseberry Topping behind me there, but when it's dipped below this thicker cloud, it's clearly not clear on the horizon. So that horizon cloud is there, although it's pretty difficult to see at the moment. I was certain it was going to come through, but you can sort of see it trying to burn through. There's a little red spot there behind the cloud, but it's just not happening. So I think what I'm going to do is pack up and we will try again. Not here, we'll go to the beach in the morning. So I'll see you bright and early. So, good morning, and it's a pretty beautiful morning down here at the beach in North Yorkshire, and we've got a little bit of a sunrise, a very small portion of the sky. I came here yesterday when it was really busy and there was lots of tourists on the beach, and I picked out a composition, this composition in fact, which I wanted to shoot this morning. The weather was forecast to be really nice, but again, I've been chasing the weather for the last 3 days. The weather forecast, it's usually pretty good. I've got different apps, I use different services like the BBC and the Met Office, but it's just been worthless over the last few days, and the weather hasn't really done anything like it said it was going to. So I've been chasing it because it was always just toying with me, saying it was going to be okay, but it never was. That has forced me out this morning though, and I think I'm still going to make something decent of the morning because it is beautiful, there's not much wind, and I'm on this beach at about 6 o'clock in the morning all by myself. So it is a very nice way to start the day. Right, photography wise, I've been desperate to do some photography over the last few days. I am set up for my first shot of the day. The camera is on the tripod and I'm just using the reflection coming off the water to add interest to the midground of this shot. And then I've got some really interesting moss covered green rocks right in the foreground here, and I'm really just, that's the main subject of the image, is these rocks in the foreground then going up into that reflection, yellow orangey reflection on the sea. And then I'm actually breaking the rule of thirds and putting the horizon right up at the top of the frame, because we've just got that little slit of light that you can see there. That's right up at the top of the frame. Anything above that really isn't that interesting. It's kind of that grey blue tinge of the sky. So I've broken the rule of thirds for that reason, because all the interest is down at the bottom of the frame. To make it work, I want to extend the exposure time a little bit just to smooth out that water, give you that nice ethereal feel, and that'll work really nicely with the colour in the sky, the green on the rocks, and then that reflection on the surface. I think it's going to work really nicely. So to do that, I have a 6-stop filter on the front, and then I'm bracketing 3 shots just to get that exposure right. I could use an ND Grad, but you know I don't use them, so I've bracketed it, and that should pick up that exposure really nicely. So that colour is starting to catch a little bit in the sky as well, so we should get the top area of the frame covered in colour. Let's have a look at that, and just bring the exposure down a little bit now that it's brightened up a bit. F11. 10-second exposure, 2 stops either side. The ISO 200 just to get that exposure time up above 30 seconds a bit. And that is that. Let's just wait and see what that looks like while it exposes. Yes, I think that looks pretty good. I will crop it down most likely into a square because all of the interest is in the center of the frame. It sort of darkens off either side because of the focal length I'm actually at 35mm just to get in close as possible onto that sky where some of the interest is. But yeah, overall, good image, nice way to start the day. And after 3 days of toiling to get a shot, it's just nice to get something in the can. Right, so for the shot, it's always good to come back to a location that you know very well, especially when things aren't going quite right for you, whether it be the weather, whether it be your mojo, whatever is going on. It's always good to come back to a location that you know very well. Even if you've shot it before, even if you've captured a great image of it before like I have here, it still pays to come back sometimes because capturing that scene in different weather conditions, with different clouds, with anything that's different in the scene will create a different image, and that could be even better than the one you've got before. And even if it's not, it's still worth doing. Today, especially at the beach, the tide is different to the last time I shot it. So the tide is currently going out. I usually prefer it when the tide is coming in to take a seascape shot, but that's fine. It's going out. So the groins are kind of sat here on the sand, and that is just leading me up. But the camera's down low to make those groins a bit bigger in the frame because they're covered in seaweed, which is a bit green and it's got loads of different tones in it, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. I then have the receding water on the sand still, which is just creating some reflection that I'm wanting to capture as well, just to give it that sort of slightly brighter feel to the image as well. That's what I'm going for. It then obviously leads you into the sea, and I'm using the long exposure to smooth that out because it's not really creating any interest unless it's nice and smooth. I just want that nice bright image. Now, to do that, I have a 10-stop filter on the front. I'm at f16 because that front groin is quite close. So that's giving me an exposure with the 10-stop ND filter on the front of 3 minutes, 25 seconds. I'm at ISO 100. And then in terms of the sky, it's quite, well, it's very cloudy, but there is a slight blue tinge to it, which is quite interesting. There are some fairly interesting shapes running through it as well, which hopefully will show some nice smooth shapes in the long exposure as well. So I'm currently at 28mm. I took my test exposure first, then put the 10-stop filter on the front, and then I'm shooting that in bulb mode with the built-in bulb timer that the Canon 5D Mark IV has. It's just about, well, it just has finished exposing, so let's have a look at that. Yeah, that's pretty nice. There is a tiny bit of a rock that's kind of sneaking in to the left-hand side of the image. Now, I've tried to remove that by adjusting my perspective and my composition, but to get the groins in the right place at the right height, close enough to the groins, I can't, it's sneaking into my frame no matter what I do. So a couple of things I can do about that is in post-production, either clone it out, which I'm going to talk a bit about that in an upcoming video about whether it's cheating or not, or I can just crop it out and it might turn into a square crop. So that's my options at the moment with that. But yeah, overall, a pretty nice shot. Love the long exposures. I'm going to do another video as well about extreme long exposures very soon. But I think what we'll do now is head back to the studio because I've worked really hard over the last 3 days to get to this point. So I'm going to head back to the studio and I will show you very, very quickly the edit of this photo. Okay, I'm back in the studio after a very busy, fun few days. We're going to edit the first picture I took though, not the last one there, because I just think it makes a much more interesting edit for you to see. I'm also going to be using the Loupedeck Plus, which Loupedeck have very kindly sent to me to try out. I am going to be filming a video in the next few days comparing it to the palette gear, so hopefully that will be something you'll be interested in. But let's get straight into the computer and edit that picture. Okay, so we're into Lightroom, and like I said, this is a bracketed shot, so I've already combined those into a HDR, and that's the way I generally work with my bracketed images. It works pretty well, there's no ghosting or anything like that, so I have that image ready here with all that dynamic range in here. So just very simply, let's come down to enable profile corrections and remove chromatic aberration. The 16 to 35 f4 seems to suffer quite a lot from vignetting, so I'll generally add a little bit in there extra. I'm going to leave the distortion as it is, and then the next thing I generally do is to make sure I have my horizon straight. So just come up here and then go to this little angle correction tool here, drag that line across the horizon and then correct it there. I wasn't far off, so that's not too bad. Right, let us start off with a little exposure boost. So I'm just going to turn the dial on the Loupedeck Plus here and just increase that exposure overall. I want it to be about there. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is as in a software grad, and I'm going to just hold shift down, get it on the horizon and then let go. I don't want my exposure there, but I do want to bring the highlights down to about there, to about 70 maybe, something like that. Try to get the detail out of that sky, and then I'm going to increase the shadows just to keep the interest in these rocks here, probably to about there. I'm then going to increase the contrast a little bit, just getting used to where the tools are on Loupedeck, and then I'm just going to increase the saturation on that a little bit to bring out those colours in that sky. I also want to affect the white balance, so I'm just going to increase the temperature a bit just to bring it back to those colours that I was seeing at the time, and then I'm going to increase the magenta in there as well to bring some of that back out that I could see at the time, and that's going to affect the reflection a little bit as well. Close that and then bring in a second one, I think, from the bottom. So again, drag up from the bottom this time, and I'm just going to put it to there and then just push that up to about there to affect the whole area of the bottom image, but I don't want the exposure affected that much, so just double click that and it should go back to normal. All I want to do here is just increase the shadows a little bit to bring out some of the details in those rocks. I'm just going to go up on the shadows a little bit, and you can start to see that come out very nicely. Just keep going to probably about there. And then I'm just going to affect the temperature there a little bit, just to bring back a little bit of the blue in that water. So just go down on the temperature and you can see that starting to take effect and looking really nice. So we're not far off there. I'm happy with the exposure across the image now, but I want to just add in a little bit more contrast first of all. So I'm going to go up on the contrast and then just bring the highlights down a bit further on the whole image to around there, and you can start to see even more detail coming out of that sky now. I want to increase those shadows back again, and that's starting to look really nice. It's then just a case of getting the whites right, so I'm just going to hold down the option key, yeah, just a touch on that white there, and then bring the blacks down, or just get the blacks right. That's looking good, and then increase in the overall saturation and vibrance, so just subtle on these ones. Okay, so that's looking pretty good now, but like I said when I was shooting it, I just want to crop off the sides of the image because that's not where the interest lies. So I'm just going to hit R to bring up my crop tool again and then go to the 1x1 square crop and just adjust it, getting the composition right. I want to have the sun not quite in the middle, so just over to the side. All the interest in the sky is over this side, so somewhere like that. Just have these rocks working on my composition, leading me up to the sun. Hit return. Very subtle changes, bit of a boost in contrast, bit of a boost in saturation, using those software ND grads with this bracketed image just to get that exposure just right. I think that looks really good, and I'm very, very happy with the results of that. The loop deck is also pretty nice to use, so yeah, looking forward to testing that out a bit more. Right, so stick around until the end for the info blast, but this video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a website a bit like the one I use, head over to squarespace.com and you can start a free trial today, and then if you like what you've set up and you decide to go ahead and make your first purchase, use the offer code FIRSTMAN and you will get 10% off. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe, like, do whatever you need to do, and I'll see you on another video very, very soon. I'm Adam. This is First Man Photography. Out.